Ambassador Lisa Grant stood in the center of the Grand Council chamber, surrounded by beings from 47 different worlds. The massive sphere stretched in every direction, with representatives floating in their designated zones. Some aliens swam in tanks of colored liquid. Others breathed toxic gases inside transparent bubbles. A few existed as pure energy, contained within crystalline shells that hummed with power. Lisa had dreamed of this moment for years. Humanity had finally taken its place among the stars. 8 months ago, humans had achieved faster-than-light travel and made first contact with the Galactic Council. The welcome had seemed warm. The possibilities had seemed endless. Now, everything was falling apart. The sovereign of the Kethran Empire spoke, its voice echoing through translation devices in every language present. The being looked like a miniature sun trapped inside a diamond, pulsing with light as it addressed the chamber. "We have reviewed the evidence. Humanity has violated 12 separate protocols in their brief time among us. They colonized worlds without authorization. They modified their own genetics to survive on hostile planets. They refused to submit their military forces to council oversight. Most concerning of all, they act without waiting for proper approval." Lisa felt her stomach tighten. She had prepared arguments for each accusation, but the cold tone in the chamber told her the decision had already been made. Still, she had to try. "Honored Sovereign, respected members of the Council," Lisa began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Humanity approaches problems differently than you do. That doesn't make us dangerous. When we found the Talvex colony on Outpost 7, they were dying. Their life support had failed. The Council's nearest response team was 6 weeks away. We had the skills and equipment to help immediately, so we did. We saved 3,000 lives." A member of the Valaxi delegation spoke up, its reptilian features twisted in what might have been concern or anger. Lisa couldn't tell yet. "You should have filed a request and waited for authorization. Procedures exist for good reasons." 3,000 people would have died while we waited for paperwork, Lisa replied. "We acted to save lives. Isn't that what matters?" "Order matters," another council member stated, this one from the Drexen Collective. "Stability matters. Your species has been part of this community for less than a standard cycle, yet you have caused more disruption than civilizations that have been here for centuries." Lisa gestured to the display screens that showed various incidents from the past 8 months. "Every incident you mention was us trying to help or defend ourselves. When pirates attacked civilian ships in the outer bands, we responded because no one else would. When we encountered hostile forces in unclaimed sectors, we protected ourselves. We haven't attacked anyone. We haven't taken what wasn't ours. We've only tried to do what's right." The Sovereign's light pulsed brighter. "That is precisely the problem. You act based on what you think is right, rather than following established procedures. You see a problem and immediately try to fix it. You encounter danger and react with force. You find a world you want and simply take it. This is not how civilized species behave. We follow rules that protect life and promote cooperation," Lisa argued, feeling desperation creep into her voice. "If your rules prevent us from saving lives or defending ourselves, then maybe the rules need to change." A wave of disturbance rippled through the chamber. Several delegates made sounds of alarm or anger. Lisa realized she had made a mistake. These civilizations had followed the same rules for 10,000 years. They saw stability as the highest virtue. Change frightened them. The Sovereign spoke again, and this time its voice carried finality. "We will now vote on the proposal to expel humanity from the Galactic Council and establish a quarantine around their home system. Representatives, cast your votes." Lisa watched the display screen as votes appeared one by one. Green lights for approval of humanity's expulsion, red lights for rejection, yellow for abstention. The green lights dominated the board. 43 civilizations voted to cast humanity out. Only 3 abstained, too uncertain to commit. One civilization, the Toruk, voted against expulsion, but one vote meant nothing against 43. The sovereign announced the verdict. Humanity is hereby expelled from the Galactic Council. All human vessels must return to their home system within 30 standard days. A quantum barrier will be erected around the Sol system to prevent unauthorized travel. This decision is final. Lisa felt numb. She had failed. Humanity had reached for the stars and been slapped down. She thought of the children back on Earth who dreamed of exploring the galaxy. She thought of the scientists who wanted to learn from alien civilizations. She thought of the diplomats, traders, and explorers who saw the universe as a place of infinite possibility. All of it was ending because humanity couldn't fit into a system designed thousands of years before humans even learned to write. The chamber began to empty. Delegates floated or walked or swam back to their docking ports. A few glanced at Lisa with what might have been sympathy. Most ignored her completely. She had become irrelevant the moment the vote ended. Lisa made her way back to the human diplomatic vessel, the Horizon. The crew was waiting, their faces showing they already knew the result. Captain Jack Morrison, who commanded the ship, approached her. "We tried," he said quietly. "We gave them every chance to see reason." "It wasn't enough," Lisa replied. She moved to the viewport and looked out at Unity Prime, the massive space station that served as the Council's headquarters. It was beautiful, a work of art created by dozens of species working together over centuries. Humanity would never be part of that collaboration now. "What do we do?" Jack asked. "We go home," Lisa said. "We tell everyone what happened, and then we figure out what comes next." The Horizon departed from Unity Prime and began the long journey back to Earth. Along the way, Lisa watched through the viewports as construction vessels began building the quantum barrier. It looked like a wall of shimmering energy slowly encircling Earth's sun, beautiful and terrible at the same time. By the time they reached Earth, the barrier was nearly complete. Lisa stood on the observation deck for the final approach, watching as humanity's window to the stars began to close. Other human ships were rushing back through the shrinking gaps, racing to get home before they were locked out forever. The last ship made it through with hours to spare. Then the barrier sealed completely. A sea 50 years had passed since the quantum barrier sealed around Earth's solar system. Captain Jack Morrison stood on the bridge of the colony ship Defiance, staring at the shimmering wall of energy that had imprisoned humanity for half a century. Jack had been a young officer on the Horizon when they brought Ambassador Grant home. He remembered the despair that had spread across Earth when people realized they were trapped. Many had given up hope of ever reaching the stars again, but not everyone. Some people, like Jack, had spent those 50 years preparing for this exact moment. "All systems ready, Captain," reported Lieutenant Amy Carter from the science station. She was young, brilliant, and had spent her entire life working toward this day. The quantum barrier that the Council thought was perfect had a flaw. Human scientists had found it. "Engineering, are the quantum tunneling drives online?" Jack asked. "Drives are hot and stable," came the response from the engine room. "We're ready when you are." Jack looked around the bridge. His crew of 200 people represented the best humanity had to offer. Scientists, engineers, families willing to risk everything for a chance at freedom. Behind them, the colony ship carried enough supplies and equipment to establish a permanent settlement wherever they landed. "Begin the breach sequence," Jack ordered. The Defiance moved forward slowly, approaching the barrier at a precise angle. The quantum tunneling drives activated, creating a field around the ship that existed in multiple dimensions at once. The Council's barrier responded to conventional physics, trying to push the ship back. But the human drives operated on different principles, exploiting quantum mechanics in ways the Council had never considered. For a moment, reality seemed to blur. The ship vibrated, and the lights flickered. Then suddenly, they were through. The barrier fell away behind them, and open space stretched ahead. Amy checked her instruments, her hands shaking with excitement. We did it! We're outside the barrier. Sensors show no council ships in range. Cheers erupted across the bridge. Jack allowed himself a smile. Humanity had been caged for 50 years, but the cage was broken now. They were free. Set course for the frontier sectors, Jack commanded. Maximum speed. We have a lot of space to explore. The Defiance jumped to faster-than-light speed, leaving Earth's solar system far behind. The drives they used were different from Council technology, more crude, less elegant, but surprisingly faster. Humans had spent 5 decades developing their own solutions to problems, without Council guidance or restrictions. 3 weeks later, they reached the frontier sectors. This region of space was marked on Council maps as dangerous and worthless. Spatial anomalies made navigation difficult. Radiation storms swept through the area regularly. Most civilizations considered it too risky to colonize. Jack studied the sensor readings and saw something else. Dozens of habitable planets with rich resources. The anomalies and storms were manageable with proper shielding and planning. To a species that had evolved on a planet with hurricanes, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions, this region looked welcoming. That planet, Jack said, pointing to a blue and green world on the display. Run a full survey. The surveys revealed what Jack had hoped. The planet had breathable air, liquid water, and conditions suitable for human life. It sat far from Council space, in an area they had abandoned without even trying to settle. We'll name it New Horizon, Jack decided, in honor of the ship that brought us home 50 years ago. The Defiance landed, and humanity's first independent colony began. Within a year, more ships from Earth found their way through the barrier. The technique spread, and soon dozens of colony ships were exploring the frontier sectors. Each found worlds the Council had dismissed, and each established settlements that grew stronger with every passing month. 10 years after that first breach, Jack found himself commanding the Defense Station Sentinel, which protected a cluster of 5 human colonies. The settlements were thriving, but they weren't alone in the frontier sectors. Dr. Amy Carter, now the lead xenobiologist for the colonies, brought Jack urgent news about a species they had encountered. The Vryn were an aquatic people with brilliant minds, particularly gifted at mathematics and engineering. But they were dying. A plague had spread through their population, killing thousands. The Council knows about them, Amy explained, showing Jack the records they had accessed. They sent a science team 40 years ago. The Council scientists said finding a cure would take decades and require resources they couldn't spare. So they left the Vryn to suffer. Jack felt anger rise in his chest. Can we help them? I think so, Amy said. Their biology is different from ours, but the plague is a virus. We have techniques for dealing with viral diseases that the Council doesn't use. Give me a team in 3 months. You have 6 weeks, Jack said. If we can help them, we do it now. Not when it's convenient, now. Amy worked around the clock with a team of human doctors and scientists. They studied Vryn biology, analyzed the plague virus, and tested hundreds of potential treatments. The Council had approached the problem the way they approached everything, carefully, methodically, following established procedures. Amy threw out the procedures and tried everything that might work. She borrowed techniques from human medicine, adapted alien technology they had traded for, and invented new approaches when old ones failed. 5 weeks later, she had a cure. The human medical team traveled to the Vryn homeworld and began distributing the treatment. Within days, Vryn, who had been dying, began to recover. Within weeks, the plague was contained. Within 2 months, it was gone. The Vryn were stunned. They had begged the Council for help for years and been told it was impossible. Then humans arrived and solved their crisis in weeks. The Vryn Council of Elders met with Jack and Amy aboard the Sentinel. Why did you help us? The eldest Vryn asked. His name was Kelm, and he had lived for over a century. The Galactic Council abandoned us. They said we weren't worth the effort. Why are you different? Because helping others is what we do, Jack replied simply. The council cast us out. They locked us away because they thought we were dangerous. But we're not dangerous. We're just willing to do what needs to be done even when it's hard. Kellum studied Jack with large, intelligent eyes. The council fears you because you don't follow their rules. The council's rules would have let your people die, Amy pointed out. We'd rather save lives than follow rules that don't make sense. Then we would like to join you, Kellum said, if you will have us. That was how the Free Systems Alliance began. The Vryn became humanity's first alien allies. They shared their mathematical genius, helping human engineers improve their ships and technology. In return, humans protected Vryn colonies and included them as equal partners in all decisions. Other species followed. The Toruk were massive beings who lived on high-gravity worlds. Their slow reproduction meant they couldn't expand fast enough to survive environmental changes on their homeworld. The Council had studied the problem and concluded the Toruk would eventually go extinct. It was unfortunate, they said, but natural. Humans looked at the problem differently. They helped the Toruk establish off-world colonies on planets with lower gravity, where Toruk could move more easily and raise more offspring. They shared suspended animation technology, allowing Toruk to travel between distant worlds. Within a generation, the Toruk population began to grow again. The Toruk joined the alliance, bringing their incredible strength and endurance to the partnership. Then came the Zelen, a species of brilliant engineers who had been exploited by council corporations. Humans helped them break free and reclaim their independence. The Zelen joined the alliance and revolutionized human manufacturing. More species came, each with their own story of being overlooked, dismissed, or exploited by the council. Each found something different with humanity: partnership instead of domination, cooperation instead of hierarchy, action instead of endless debate. Commander Greg Hayes watched the Council survey ship approach through Sentinel Station's sensor displays. The vessel was a standard Valaxi design, sleek and efficient, bearing the Council's official markings. It had appeared at the edge of the system an hour ago and was now moving slowly toward the human colonies, clearly scanning everything it could detect. Greg had prepared for this moment. Every defensive system on Sentinel was online, but weapons remained powered down. He wanted the Council to see strength, not aggression. The station's crew moved efficiently through their duties, calm and professional, despite knowing that history was being made. The Council ship sent a transmission. Greg accepted it, and the image of a Valaxi captain appeared on the main screen. The reptilian alien's scales gleamed under its ship's lighting, and its eyes held an expression Greg had learned to recognize as surprise mixed with disapproval. "I am Captain Jen of the Galactic Council Survey Corps," the alien announced. "This region is designated as restricted frontier space. Your presence here is unauthorized. Identify yourselves immediately." Greg kept his voice level and polite. "I'm Commander Greg Hayes of the Free Systems Alliance. Welcome to our territory. How can we help you today?" Jen's scales shifted color slightly, a sign of agitation. "Free Systems Alliance? There is no such organization in Council records. You will provide your Council registration immediately." "We don't have Council registration," Greg replied. "Humanity was expelled from the Council 50 years ago. You locked us away, remember? We found our own path." "The quarantine around Earth remains in place," Jen stated, confusion evident in its voice. "How did you get here?" "We found a way through. Turns out your barrier wasn't as perfect as you thought." Greg gestured to the displays showing the colonies below. "We've been here for 20 years. Built 40 settlements, made some friends. We're doing quite well, actually." Jen studied the sensor readings, and Greg could see the alien captain struggling to process what it was seeing. Human colonies where there should be nothing. Alien species working alongside humans. technology that matched or exceeded council standards. "This is illegal," Zhen finally said. "You are colonizing space without council authorization. You are forming political alliances with unregistered species. You must cease these activities immediately and return to your quarantine zone." Greg felt a flash of anger but kept it controlled. "Captain Zhen, let me explain something. The council expelled us. You told us we had no place among the stars. You locked us away and forgot about us. We don't need your permission anymore. We don't want your permission. We're doing things our way now." "The council has authority over all civilized space," Zhen insisted, though its voice carried less certainty than before. "Then it's lucky we're not in civilized space," Greg replied. "This is the frontier sectors. Your own maps say this region is too dangerous to colonize. You abandoned it. We claimed it. Under council law, that makes it ours." Zhen's image flickered as the captain consulted with its crew. When the Valaxi spoke again, its tone had hardened. "Regardless of technicalities, your expansion threatens council interests. You will withdraw from this region, or we will be forced to take action." "What kind of action?" Greg asked calmly. The council ship's weapons powered up. Energy readings spiked across Greg's tactical display. The Valaxi was making a threat, showing force to back up its demands. Greg nodded to his weapons officer. Sentinel Station's defensive systems activated, but not in the way the Valaxi expected. Instead of charging weapons, the station deployed adaptive shielding, a human innovation that analyzed incoming energy signatures and adjusted to counter them in real time. "Captain Zhen," Greg said quietly, "you can fire if you want. Our shields will adapt to your weapons within seconds. Then we'll have a fight, and you're one ship against a fully armed defense station with support from 3 patrol vessels in range. This won't end well for you." "You would fire on a council vessel?" Zhen demanded, shocked. "Only if fired upon first," Greg assured him. "We don't want to fight, but we won't run away either. We've spent 50 years learning to stand our ground. If you force this issue, you'll learn just how much we've learned." For a long moment, silence filled the channel. Greg waited, his hand near the weapons control but not touching it. He needed the Valaxi to back down, to return to council space and report what they found here. That would start conversations, open possibilities. A battle would only make things worse. Finally, Zhen spoke. "We will report this encounter to the council. They will decide how to respond." "You do that," Greg said. "Tell them humanity says hello. Tell them we've been busy." The council ship powered down its weapons and reversed course. Within minutes, it jumped to faster-than-light speed and vanished. Greg let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Message to all colonies and allied stations," he ordered. "The council knows we're here. Prepare for increased patrols and possible diplomatic contact. Or military action. We need to be ready for anything." News of the encounter spread quickly through the Free Systems Alliance. Within days, every human colony and allied species knew that the Council had discovered their existence. Reactions varied. Some feared the Council would send fleets to destroy what they had built. Others welcomed the chance to prove themselves. Ambassador Lisa Grant, now 78 years old but still active in human politics, saw an opportunity. She had spent 50 years watching humanity grow beyond the Council's reach. She had seen them build alliances based on mutual respect rather than power. She had watched them succeed where the Council had failed or never even tried. Now the Council knew. Now they would have to respond. Lisa decided to force their hand. She recorded a message, carefully crafted and loaded with information the Council wouldn't want publicized. Then she transmitted it through every communication channel the Free Systems Alliance had access to, including several that reached deep into Council space. The message began with Lisa sitting in a simple office aboard one of the colony worlds. She looked older now, her hair completely gray, her face lined with age. But her eyes were sharp, and her voice carried the same strength it had 50 years ago when she stood before the Council. Members of the Galactic Council, I am Ambassador Lisa Grant of Humanity. We last spoke 5 decades ago, when you voted to expel my species from galactic society. You deemed us too dangerous, too unpredictable to be trusted among civilized peoples. You locked us away and assumed we would simply accept our exile. Lisa paused, letting her words settle. You were wrong. Humanity has not only survived, we have thrived. We have 40 colonies, 12 allied species, and technology that rivals yours in many areas. We have accomplished in 50 years what it took your council centuries to achieve. She leaned forward slightly. But this message is not about boasting. It's about truth. You see, we've been watching you for decades. We've monitored your communications. We've tracked your ships. We know about the growing tensions within your council. We know about the subject species that are restless under your rule. We know about emerging threats from outside council space that your bureaucracy is too slow to address. Lisa's expression softened. We also know about the problems you've ignored because they weren't convenient. The Vryn, dying from a plague you said was unsolvable. The Toruk, facing extinction because helping them wasn't cost-effective. The Zelin, exploited for their skills but denied fair treatment. We know because we helped all of them. We solved problems you abandoned. She stood and walked to a window showing a bustling colony below where humans and aliens worked side by side. The Council expelled us because we act without waiting for permission, because we solve problems instead of debating them, because we value results over procedure. You were right to fear those qualities, but not for the reasons you thought. Lisa turned back to the camera. You should fear us because we represent an alternative to your system. We prove that civilizations can cooperate without your rigid hierarchy. We show that progress comes from flexibility, not tradition. We demonstrate that compassion and quick action can achieve more than careful planning and proper authorization. Her voice grew stronger. So here is our offer. Recognize the Free Systems Alliance as an independent entity. Open diplomatic channels. Let us prove that different approaches can coexist, or try to suppress us, and discover just how much we've learned about surviving against impossible odds. Lisa sat back down, her gaze direct and unwavering. The choice is yours, but choose whiz. The crisis came from beyond the galactic rim, from a region of space so distant that even the Council's long-range sensors had never properly mapped it. They were called the Devourers, though that name came later. At first, they were just strange signals and missing ships at the edge of Council territory. Admiral Kyle Bennett received the first reports in his office on Earth's orbital command station. He had spent 30 years building humanity's combined fleet, preparing for the day when the Council might try to force them back into quarantine. Now, as he studied the intercepted Council transmissions, he realized the threat came from a different direction entirely. They're bugs, his intelligence officer explained, displaying what little information Council ships had gathered before being destroyed. Insectoid, hive-minded, maybe 10 feet tall. They travel in swarms of thousands of ships. They don't communicate. They don't negotiate. They just consume everything in their path. Kyle studied the grainy images of devourer vessels. They looked organic, like flying insects made of metal and chitin. They moved in coordinated swarms, overwhelming defenses through sheer numbers and relentless aggression. How is the Council responding? Kyle asked. Massive fleet mobilization. They're pulling ships from everywhere, forming defensive lines at the invasion points. Standard Council doctrine, big fleets, heavy firepower, approved tactics. And how's that working? The intelligence officer's expression answered before words did. They're losing badly. The Devourers adapt to Council weapons within hours. They swarm through defensive lines like water through a net. 3 systems have already fallen. Kyle pulled up tactical maps showing the invasion. The Devourers were pushing deeper into Council space, and the Council's response was failing. Their rigid military doctrine, perfected over centuries of peacekeeping against minor threats, couldn't handle an enemy that didn't follow expected patterns. "Keep monitoring," Kyle ordered. "This isn't our fight, but I want to know everything that happens." 2 weeks later, a transmission reached human space that changed everything. It came from Kelvar Prime, a council world in the path of the Devourer advance. The planet held 6 billion civilians, mostly Kelvari, a peaceful species known for art and philosophy. The message was desperate. The council fleet protecting Kelvar Prime had been destroyed. Evacuation ships couldn't move 6 billion people in the time remaining. The Devourers would reach the planet in 4 days. It was a call for help sent to everyone, including the species the council had expelled decades ago. Kyle watched the transmission 3 times, seeing the fear in the Kelvari leader's eyes. 6 billion lives, families, children, people who had nothing to do with humanity's expulsion. People who would die because the council's military couldn't adapt fast enough. He called an emergency meeting of humanity's military leadership. Commander Greg Hayes attended via video link from Sentinel Station. Captain Jack Morrison, retired but still influential, joined from his home on New Horizon. "The council has always said we're too dangerous to be civilized," Kyle began. "They locked us away to protect themselves. Now they're losing a war because their civilization makes them inflexible. The question is, do we help them?" "Help the people who cast us out?" one admiral asked bitterly. "Why should we?" "Because 6 billion people are about to die," Jack said quietly from his remote connection. "The council wronged us. That's true. But those 6 billion civilians on Kelvar Prime didn't vote to expel us. Most of them probably never heard of humanity. They're just people trying to live their lives. We don't punish innocent people for their government's mistakes." "It's a trap," another officer argued. "The council wants us to commit our forces so they can study our tactics and technology." Greg shook his head. "I don't think so. I've been analyzing their transmissions. They're genuinely desperate. Their defensive lines are collapsing. If Kelvar Prime falls, the Devourers will have a clear path to the Council's core worlds." Kyle looked around the room at the faces of humanity's military leaders. He saw doubt, anger, fear, and something else. The same stubborn determination that had let humanity survive 50 years of isolation. "I'm not ordering anyone," Kyle said, "but I'm taking the fleet to Kelvar Prime. Anyone who wants to join me is welcome. Anyone who wants to stay and protect our space can do that. No judgment either way." Every officer in the room volunteered. Within 6 hours, humanity's combined fleet was assembling. 200 ships ranging from massive carriers to nimble patrol craft. It was everything humanity had built in 50 years of independence, and Kyle was gambling it all on a rescue mission. The fleet included vessels from their allied species, Vryn warships with advanced sensors, Toruk heavy cruisers built for endurance, Zelen support craft with revolutionary engineering. The Free Systems Alliance was going to war, not for territory or power, but to save lives. They jumped to Kelvar Prime with 12 hours to spare before the Devourer swarm arrived. The planet hung in space below them, its cities visible from orbit. Kyle opened a channel to the Kelvari leadership. "This is Admiral Kyle Bennett of the Free Systems Alliance. We received your distress call. We're here to help." The response came quickly, the Kelvari leader's voice shaking with relief and disbelief. "You're humans? But the council said you were quarantined. Why are you here?" "Long story," Kyle replied. "Right now, we need to focus on keeping you alive. We have a plan, but we'll need your cooperation." The plan was pure human thinking. Asymmetric warfare, guerrilla tactics, and using the environment as a weapon. The Devourers operated as a swarm, coordinating through biological signals. They expected enemies to form defensive lines and fight set-piece battles. Greg Hayes had studied every engagement between the Devourers and Council forces. He had identified patterns and weaknesses. Now he put that knowledge to work. "We don't fight them head-on," Greg explained to the fleet commanders. "We use the asteroid field around Kelvar Prime as cover. We hit small parts of their swarm, destroy a few ships, and vanish before they can coordinate a response. Death by 1,000 cuts." "What about their adaptation?" a captain asked. "They learn to counter Council weapons quickly." Dr. Amy Carter, now the Alliance's chief science officer, answered from her lab ship. "They adapt to energy signatures, but we rotate our weapons constantly. Different frequencies, different delivery systems. We never give them the same target twice in a row." The Devourer swarm arrived exactly on schedule. Thousands of organic ships moving in perfect coordination. They headed straight for Kelvar Prime, ignoring the human fleet initially. They had learned to focus on conquest, not on scattered defenders. That was their first mistake against humanity. Human ships darted out from the asteroid field, firing volleys of missiles and energy weapons at precise points in the swarm. 20 Devourer vessels exploded. Before the swarm could respond, the human ships vanished back into the asteroids. The Devourers adapted, sending pursuit groups into the asteroid field. But humans had prepared for that too. The asteroids were mined with explosive charges. As Devourer ships entered, humans detonated the charges, turning the asteroids into deadly shrapnel. The battle continued for 3 days. Humans struck and vanished, always moving, never predictable. The Vrin sensors tracked every part of the swarm, feeding information to human tactical computers. The Toruk heavy ships absorbed damage meant for lighter vessels, their incredible durability keeping them fighting when others would have fallen. Amy's team deployed the jamming technology they had developed, devices that disrupted the biological signals the Devourers used for coordination. Suddenly, parts of the swarm couldn't communicate with each other. They became confused, disorganized, vulnerable. Human losses mounted. 40 ships destroyed. Thousands of lives lost. But they held the line. Every hour they delayed the Devourers was another hour for Kelvar Prime civilians to evacuate to underground shelters. On the 3rd day, something unexpected happened. Council reinforcements arrived, a small fleet led by ships from species that had been watching the battle. They had seen human tactics working where traditional methods failed. They had witnessed the Free Systems Alliance sacrificing their ships to protect a world that wasn't their own. The Council ships adapted their tactics, following human leads, fighting the way humans fought. Together, they broke the Devourer swarm's coordination completely. The insects. The galaxy changed in the weeks following the Battle of Kelvar Prime. News of what humanity had done spread through Council space faster than any official announcement could travel. 6 billion lives saved by the species the Council had declared too dangerous for civilization. The irony was not lost on anyone. Ambassador Lisa Grant watched the developments from her office on New Horizon. She was 83 now, her body failing in ways that modern medicine could slow but not stop. But her mind remained sharp, and she recognized a historic moment when she saw one. The first sign came when the Kelvari formally requested to join the Free Systems Alliance. They were followed by 3 more Council species within a week, then 5 more. Then entire sectors began questioning why they remained under Council authority when the Council had failed to protect them. The Council itself fractured. Conservative members insisted on maintaining traditional structures, arguing that the Devourer crisis was an anomaly. Progressive members demanded reform, pointing out that rigid adherence to procedure had nearly cost 6 billion lives. In the middle, uncertain members simply waited to see which way the wind would blow. Then came the message Lisa had been waiting for. An official request from the Kethran Empire for a meeting between the sovereign and representatives of humanity. The same being that had led the vote to expel humanity 50 years ago was now asking to talk. Lisa knew she should send younger diplomats, people with more energy and more years ahead of them. But this was personal. She had stood before the sovereign once and watched her species be cast out. She would stand before the sovereign again and hear what it had to say. The meeting was arranged at a neutral location, a new space station built at the border between Council Space and Free Systems territory. Lisa traveled there aboard a human diplomatic ship, accompanied by Admiral Kyle Bennett and Commander Greg Hayes. Jack Morrison, now too old for space travel, attended via video link. The Sovereign waited in a specially constructed chamber designed to accommodate its unique form. The crystalline shell that contained its energy-based consciousness pulsed with soft light. Around it floated advisors from various council species, looking uncertain and tense. Lisa entered the chamber using a walking support device. She refused to show weakness, standing as straight as her aged body would allow. Kyle and Greg flanked her, their presence a reminder that humanity was no longer alone and helpless. "Ambassador Grant," the Sovereign began, its voice carrying the same resonance Lisa remembered from 50 years ago. "We meet again under very different circumstances." "We do," Lisa agreed. "Last time you told my species we had no place among the stars. This time you asked to speak with us. What's changed?" The Sovereign's light pulsed in what might have been the equivalent of a sigh. "Everything has changed. The Council believed our way was the only way. That stability required conformity. That safety demanded control. We were wrong." Lisa waited. She had learned patience over the decades. The Sovereign would explain in its own time. "The Devourer crisis revealed fundamental flaws in how we think and act," the Sovereign continued. "Our military doctrine failed because it was designed for a galaxy that no longer exists. Our political structure prevented rapid response when rapid response was needed. Our entire civilization was so focused on maintaining what we had that we forgot how to adapt to new challenges." "And humanity?" Lisa prompted. "Humanity thrived because you were forced to adapt. You had no choice. When we locked you away, we thought we were protecting the galaxy from your dangerous unpredictability. Instead, we created something far more dangerous to our way of life. Proof that our system was not inevitable or necessary." Greg spoke up. "You could have learned from us. If you had let us stay, we could have worked together, found a middle path between your stability and our flexibility." "Yes," the Sovereign admitted, "but we were afraid. Your species is only centuries old, yet you achieve what takes others millennia. You form bonds with species we dismissed. You solve problems we declared unsolvable. You inspire others to question authority we thought unquestionable. That frightened us more than any military threat." "So what do you want now?" Lisa asked directly. "Are you here to offer an apology? To ask us to forget the past and pretend everything is fine?" "No," the Sovereign said firmly. "An apology would be meaningless. The past cannot be changed, but the future can be shaped. I am here to ask what humanity wants. What would it take for our civilizations to move forward together?" Lisa glanced at Kyle and Greg, then at the image of Jack on the video screen. They had discussed this moment, prepared for it, but now that it was here, the weight of it felt overwhelming. What they decided in this room would shape the galaxy for generations. "We want partnership," Lisa said. "Real partnership, not subordination. The Council and the Free Systems Alliance need to merge into something new. A stellar commonwealth where every species has equal voice regardless of how long they've been in space or how closely they follow tradition." "You're asking us to abandon 10,000 years of structure," one of the Council advisors objected. "We're asking you to evolve," Kyle countered. "Your structure was built for a different time. It served you well for millennia, but the galaxy is changing. The Devourers proved that. New threats are emerging. Old assumptions are failing. You can adapt and grow stronger, or you can cling to the past and grow weaker. The Sovereign was quiet for a long moment, its light pulsing slowly. What you propose would require restructuring every aspect of council governance. Military doctrine would need complete overhaul. Political protocols would need to be rewritten. It would be chaos for years. Or it would be progress, Lisa said softly. Yes, there will be chaos. Change is always messy. But staying the same means dying slowly. The species that are joining the Free Systems Alliance aren't doing it because we force them. They're doing it because we offer something better: flexibility, equality, and the freedom to solve problems without waiting for permission. And if the council refuses? Another advisor asked. Greg answered that one. Then the Free Systems Alliance continues growing on its own. More species will join us. More territory will fall under our influence. Eventually, there will be two major powers in the galaxy instead of one. That means competition, possibly conflict. Is that what you want? No, the Sovereign said. We have seen enough conflict. Very well. I will propose to the Council that we begin formal negotiations to create this stellar commonwealth. I cannot promise success. Many members will resist. But I will try. That's all we ask, Lisa said. A chance to build something better together. The negotiations took 2 years. Lisa died during the first year, her body finally giving out after 8 decades of life. She passed peacefully in her sleep on New Horizon, surrounded by family and friends. Her final words, spoken to Jack Morrison during his last visit, were simple. We showed them we belonged. That's enough. Jack himself passed 6 months later, his heart giving out while he watched a new colony ship launch from New Horizon. He smiled as he died, having seen humanity grow from a single quarantine system to a force that reshaped the galaxy. The Stellar Commonwealth was formally established in a ceremony that brought together representatives from over 70 species. The old council structure was dismantled. New systems of governance were built around principles of equality and flexibility. Military doctrine was reformed to value adaptability and innovation. Admiral Kyle Bennett became the first Supreme Commander of Commonwealth Defense Forces, overseeing an integrated military that combined the best practices from dozens of civilizations. Dr. Amy Carter led the Commonwealth Science Initiative, bringing together researchers from across the galaxy to tackle problems cooperatively rather than competitively. Commander Greg Hayes established the Commonwealth Rapid Response Fleet, specialized in handling crises that required quick action rather than bureaucratic approval. The fleet operated on human principles: see a problem, fix it, ask permission later if necessary. 50 years after the formation of the Commonwealth, an elderly Greg stood on the observation deck of Unity Prime, the former council headquarters now transformed into the Commonwealth's political center. Beside him stood his granddaughter, Lieutenant Sarah Hayes, a young officer in the Rapid Response Fleet. "Grandfather," Sarah asked, "do you ever wish things had been different, that the council had accepted humanity from the beginning?" Greg watched ships from dozens of species docking at the station, working together, learning from each other. He thought about Lisa's determination, Jack's courage, Kyle's leadership, Amy's brilliance. He thought about the 40 ships humanity lost at Kelvar Prime and the thousands who died to save 6 billion strangers. "No," he said finally. "If the council had accepted us, we would have tried to fit into their system. We would have followed their rules, adopted their ways, become smaller versions of ourselves to match their expectations. Being cast out forced us to become something greater. But people died," Sarah said quietly. "The isolation, the battles, all the years of struggle." "Yes," Greg agreed. "People died, but their sacrifice meant something. They proved that a species doesn't earn respect by following someone else's rules. You earn respect by staying true to your values, by helping others even when it costs you, by building bridges instead of walls." He gestured to the bustling station below. The council gave humanity a place at their table, and we were grateful. But their table was too small, too rigid. So we built a bigger table, one where everyone could sit, where new voices were welcomed instead of feared, where different approaches were celebrated instead of suppressed. "And the galaxy is better for it?" Sarah asked. Greg smiled. "The galaxy is different because of it. Whether that's better depends on who you ask. But I think so. We didn't seize a throne through conquest. We earned it through sacrifice, innovation, and the stubborn refusal to give up on others even when they had given up on us." He looked out at the stars, at the ships moving between them, at the future being built by dozens of species working together. "The council cast us out thinking we were too dangerous. They were right, just not in the way they feared. We were dangerous to their status quo, to their rigid thinking, to their assumption that their way was the only way." "And now?" Sarah asked. "Now we're all building something new together, something that wouldn't have been possible if humanity had been accepted 50 years ago. Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the harshest trials. Being cast out was the best thing that ever happened to us." Greg put his arm around his granddaughter's shoulder. "Remember that, Sarah. When people try to tell you who you are or what you can become, remember that humanity was locked away and told they had no place among the stars. Look at where we are now." Below them, a new colony ship prepared to launch, carrying families from 6 different species to a distant world where they would build a home together. The ship's name was painted on its hull in multiple languages: New Beginning. The galaxy had cast humanity out, fearing what they might become. In doing so, they had created exactly what they feared, a force that would reshape everything, but that force was not one of conquest or domination. It was a force of change, of adaptation, of building something better from the ruins of something broken. Humanity had seized no throne. They had built a bigger table, and the galaxy, reluctantly at first but with growing enthusiasm, had chosen to sit at it. That was the greatest victory of all. The surviving Devourer ships retreated, fleeing back toward the galactic rim. Kelvar Prime was saved. 6 billion people survived because humanity had refused to let them die. Kyle stood on the bridge of his flagship, exhausted and grieving for the crews they had lost. A transmission came from the Council Observation Force that had been monitoring Free Systems territory. "Admiral Bennett," the Council commander said, and Kyle heard something in the alien's voice he had never heard from a Council member before. "Respect. The Council has witnessed what you did here. We will be reporting that humanity and the Free Systems Alliance saved 6 billion lives when we could not. That will be remembered." Kyle nodded. "Just tell them we did what needed to be done. Same as always. Ely, because humanity didn't seize a throne through conquest. We built something new, something better, and we're not going away." The message ended, and Lisa knew it had reached Council space within hours. She imagined the chaos it would cause. Some Council members would be outraged at the challenge. Others would be intrigued by what humanity had accomplished. All of them would have to respond somehow. 3 weeks later, the Council's response came. Not an invasion fleet as some had feared. Instead, an observation force. 10 ships tasked with monitoring the Free Systems Alliance and reporting back. It was a compromise, a way to buy time while the Council figured out what to do about the humans who refused to stay in their cage. Lisa smiled when she heard the news. An observation force meant the Council was uncertain. Uncertainty meant opportunity. The door was open now, even if just a crack. What happened next would depend on how both sides chose to act. Humanity had been cast out by the galaxy, but they had not been defeated. And now, finally, the galaxy was being forced to notice. 20 years after Jack broke through the quantum barrier, the Free Systems Alliance included humanity and 12 alien species. They controlled 40 colony worlds and dozens of space stations. Their technology rivaled Council standards in most areas and exceeded it in some. Jack stood on the observation deck of Sentinel Station, watching ships from 6 different species dock and depart. Humans worked alongside Vryn, Toruk, and others, building something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. His second-in-command, Commander Greg Hayes, joined him at the viewport. Greg was younger than Jack, sharp and tactical, always thinking 3 moves ahead. "Council survey ship just jumped into the outer system," Greg reported. "They're scanning our colonies." Jack nodded. He had known this day would come. Humanity had been quiet for 50 years, and then suddenly they were everywhere. The Council would notice eventually. "Let them look," Jack said. "Let them see what we've built. Let them understand that casting us out was the biggest mistake they ever made. A retain of energy that would prevent any human ship from leaving and any Council ship from entering. Earth was alone again, cut off from the galaxy they had barely begun to explore." Lisa pressed her hand against the viewport, feeling the cold surface. Somewhere beyond that barrier were 47 civilizations that had decided humanity was too dangerous, too unpredictable, too different to be trusted. They had cast humanity out. They had locked them away. They had decided that humans had no place among the stars. They would all learn how wrong they were, but that would take time. For now, Lisa could only watch as Earth disappeared behind the quantum wall and wonder if humanity would ever see the stars again.